I just love the way you play. I just love the way you sing. I love everything about this. This is such good. This is good stuff. Thank you. Well, merriest of Christmases, and how's your Christmas going? Is it perfect? Hell no. It's not perfect because it never will be. It never can be. And that's the whole story of Christmas. Christmas is the story of perfection being birthed in the middle of imperfection. And I'm always telling stories about breaking the illusions of what that first Christmas was. You know, we all grew up with little creches under the tree of little sanitized, little perfect family. Oh my gosh. And even the animals were well behaved. They didn't poop. And then there's the manger, which of course is a feed box, dribbling and drooling into a feed box, the animals. And they didn't have Lysol. And here is the depiction of God, the experience of God as a baby, God as a baby. And where would you put? Get off your theological thinking. Just where would you put God as a baby? Not in that. You couldn't. You wouldn't do that. But what is the story telling us? It's telling us that whatever you're doing right now in your life, and whatever you're about, and whatever you've done in your life, it's pretty darn good. It's good enough. It's darn good enough for Christmas. It's darn good enough for you, the birth of the Christ baby in you. And my heart is like a manger. And it's sometimes it's like that manger. And that's the perfect place to place the baby. The perfect place to place the baby of your heart, the baby Jesus, the baby divinity in you. Where's that perfect place? It's your heart, and your heart's exactly the way it is. Conditions are exactly as they are. They're not going to change. They're not going to get, you're never going to get, well, you know, I'm going to have a spiritual experience when I get myself this way. I'll get them this way. Think about your family celebrations and how hard we try to get everybody to adhere to our personal Christmas traditions. You know, the number one, they did a study of marriages, and in the first year of marriage, you know what the number one worst fight is more than any other? Christmas traditions. And yet we this is that time where there can be so much love and so much acceptance. But you know why God is born as a baby? Because you don't expect anything from a baby. If you need to, you change the baby's diaper. You don't say, why would you do such a thing? It's not convenient. The reason why we all love babies so much is that we don't expect anything from them. And we need to do that with each other a little more, and with our traditions, our family gatherings, all of those things. And stop trying to get ourselves to get in line. You know, this morning we had the most wonderful experience. At 9:25 service, we had the children's pageant. It's an annual thing, and this church has done it for decades, and it's done after, you know, they did it many different ways before they got smart, and they realized the way to do it is the way that doesn't have any control. Get totally out of control this Christmas. I get totally out of control this Christmas. Together, I get totally out of control this Christmas. And I get my fingerprints off my Christmas. Together. And I get my fingerprints off my Christmas. And then I leave everybody else alone. Together. And I leave everybody else alone. I let them be. I let them. And the children, they were so great. There were children this morning that didn't want to be donkeys, and the children that wanted to be what he was, and everybody had their experience, and it was perfect. That's the beauty of it. They finally figured out about 20 years ago here that that it was the perfect expression of Christmas to let the children just be children and let it be spontaneous and beautiful. You know, I told the story to them, and I'll tell it to you, about a Unity minister I knew that came into a church that had been very rigid for many years. They'd had the same Sunday school director for many years, and she had Christmas pageant down like clockwork. She handpicked the best behaved children to do exactly what they needed to do, had just a few of them, and they did it, and it was great, and the rest of the children watched. A new minister came in, and this minister saw that and went, oh, gee, and you know, was trying to meet this director halfway and said, you know, what if we do it your way, but maybe open it up for all the rest of the children to be, I don't know, sheep or angels. And then they can just they can just express, and you know, you can still do it your way. And she was so offended. She was really looking for an excuse anyway because she didn't like the guy. She resigned, and so they had to quickly deputize somebody to come in and take over. And there's only a couple of weeks, 3 weeks until this pageant or something. And so they did it this new way. They did their pageant as they'd always done it, but they opened it up, and it backfired on them. It was unbelievable what happened. Well, first of all, the new deputized director didn't really understand Bible translations, and they always had a child reading from the King James of Mary was great with child. Well, she handed the kid a modern translation, and Mary was pregnant. Pregnant? And out came this outburst. The whole place started laughing. And the woman who had been the director was there in the, you know, and she was kind of going, She had the look on her face like I could have told him so. And then the sheep were going around, and apparently these sheep, most of them were boys, and they had seen what sheep do. And they were going around up to people going, bah, bah. And you couldn't hear anything that was going on. And then the angels were flapping these things, and it was absolute chaos. And then in the back of the room, the oldest member of the church called out, "This is just exactly perfect." And there was a hush that came over everybody. And it was a holy moment. It was a sacred moment. And the former director had tears going down. And she realized, you can't control Christmas. You can't control Christmas. The Christmas in your heart, you can't control it. The circumstances of life. I want everybody to behave the way I want them to behave, don't you? If they would just conform, if they would just do what it is that I want them to do, they would be so much happier. And I do that to myself. If I could just have everything exactly the way, and especially, you know what I did this morning? I got up, and I don't wear a tie and a shirt anymore, so I wear a t-shirt, right? But I get my white t-shirt out, and there's a big yellowish stain. I must have some iced tea or something. And I had another shirt that didn't quite match that I could have put on. I thought, no, I'm going to wear this stained shirt because it's the perfect metaphor for Christmas. It's like you can't put on a perfect Christmas. Christmas was 2,000 years ago the most imperfect of celebrations. But you know what? With all the stories and all the Gospels about Christmas, one thing they didn't do was whine about it. Nobody whined about it. What do you mean we have to pay a tax to this emperor in Rome and go back to a town we don't even know anybody because it's our ancestral town and travel? And Mary's pregnant. Can you imagine her having to walk or be in the back of a donkey or something? I don't know. It would have been horrible. And then they can't get in the room at the inn. The people are all drunk in the inn because it was a bar. That's what an inn was. It was a bar. And they said, "I go out back with the animals, and give birth to your kid. Shut up." And they go back there, and then there's, how clean is that stable? And this is childbirth. Oh my gosh. And they're strangers. And all the things leading up to it. Mary, there's a part of us, everybody in the story is us. There's a part of us that that feels like Mary does sometimes. She'd been misunderstood. They thought that she got pregnant and they knew it wasn't Joseph, and they didn't believe this Holy Spirit story. They didn't. So her reputation was trashed. And so here she was, and she, according to the historians, was 13, 14, no more than 15 years old. And that's the truth in their culture. And she's married, betrothed, was married to Joseph, who had already been widowed. And all this is going on. The circumstances are dreadful. And then this birth takes place, and what happens? This star in the sky, okay, and who saw the star? Well, if it was so bright, the priests didn't see it in Jerusalem. And Bethlehem was close by. They should have been able to see it. But you know why they didn't see it? Because they had their noses up in the air. They were involved in all of their corrupt dealings that they were doing. And the people in the end, they were right there. They didn't see it. Who saw it? It was the shepherds, who were the outlaws of their culture. They were the people that ran the smuggling. And they were ritually unclean, and they weren't allowed in the temple in Jerusalem because they couldn't fulfill all of the things. I tell these stories. This is about my 200th Christmas service that I've given. But it still amazes me, A, that it was the way it was, and B, that we think it was something so different, that we treat it like it was some kind of sanitized, PG, politically correct thing, and it wasn't. It gives us hope. It gives us a feeling of confidence in our ability to have the experience. What is it that you have set as your Christmas intention? Remember, we've talked about it. Thanksgiving, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I'm asking everybody to come up with a courageous Christmas intention, a desire of your heart that you want to place, and this is a new metaphor, a new image, place as a gift under the tree, and then open it Christmas Eve, Christmas morning, whenever you open your Christmas presents, so that you can have the experience of the birth as something that's going to roll out into the year 2000. Remember, I told about the three parts of this holiday season. Thanksgiving is where you plant the seed of your intention with gratitude, and it energizes it. And then Christmas is where it comes forth in a new birth. And then New Year's is where it rolls out into a new experience. This year that is coming for you, this 2020, is going to be unlike any other year. The conditions of life on planet Earth are not ideal, but they're perfect for the birth. The conditions of your life are not ideal. Stop trying to get them to be ideal for you to have the birth. The birth's coming anyway. The babies do that. And then this birth is of divinity in your heart. 2,000 years ago, it was God as a baby. Why would God? Think about God as you understand God to be. Probably a pretty abstract, lofty concept. Can't really relate to it very well, could you? But you could relate to a baby, can't you? That's why this story. I can relate to a baby. Everybody knows what a baby is. Not everybody knows what the theological, lofty, metaphysical concept of God is, but everybody knows what a baby is. And most of us like them. And again, the reason why we love the baby is because the baby we don't expect anything from the baby. It's unconditional love. It's that sense that whatever we just love the baby. It doesn't really we don't expect it to do anything. And yet, isn't it ironic that this birth of this baby Jesus was in the most helpless of forms, where somebody had to take care of the baby. I think I've shared this story before of the woman I knew who had read all the parenting books, and maybe 2-3 days after having birth and had gone home and was frantic because she was trying to read in the books, and her mother, what to do because the baby was crying or whatever, and her mother-in-law came over and picked up the baby and handed the baby to her and says, Forget the books. The baby only needs one thing. The baby only needs you. And she held the baby and she started crying and she realized that's all the baby in you needs. This birth in you just needs your attention and your love. How are you giving your love and attention this Christmas and in your life every day to the birth that's happening in your heart of your spiritual intention, but also just the birth of the who that you are from within? How are you doing that? Are you spending the time to get quiet? It was a silent night. It was a quiet time. The receptivity of the heart is a very quiet thing. One of the reasons why I think people have so many problems in the world is that we don't take time to stop. In the Gospel of Thomas, it says, Jesus says, the sign of the Spirit is a movement and a rest. A movement and a rest. And I thought about that and I realized that's a heartbeat. A movement and a rest. The sign of the Spirit is like a heartbeat. Now, let's talk about the heart. The heart, which is really, I believe, the manger into which we place the baby in this understanding. The heart beats, and it's a muscle. And you've got muscles, but if you take any other muscle, like this muscle or that muscle, and you start doing something like this, at some point you're going to get real tired, and then it's going to get painful, and your muscles will start crying out because they don't want to just keep moving like that. But it's built into every heartbeat, a rest. There's a pause. And that pause allows your heart to beat, I looked it up this morning on Google, 3.5 billion times a lifetime. And it doesn't ever, because it's resting constantly. In your life, do you take that rest? Do you take the rest? And how could you take the rest? Well, maybe a lot of us think it's when you get a big bag of popcorn and lie in bed and binge watch Netflix. Nothing wrong with that. That's recreation. But it's a different kind of rest that the heart of us needs. A different kind of rest. What kind of rest could that be? Turning it off. Stopping. Not all of us are going to sit cross-legged and meditate, but taking a walk in nature and letting go of who we thought we were. You know, the birth of the Christ child in us is truly the birth of who we truly are. That's what my intention is. Thank you that I get to know who I really am. And that's what I'm talking about. So there's that within you that is who you really are. Well, then who is this person that I've been walking around pretending to be? That's just who I thought I was. And so my affirmation has been, I surrender who I thought I was, and I give thanks. I am getting to know who I really am now. My heart is opening to you and asking you to consider the possibility that the whole purpose why you are here on earth is to have this birth, is to wake up to who you really are, to wake up to what is inside of you and was placed inside of you at the beginning. It's always there. Your higher self, that's another word for it, the Christ in you, the divinity within you, and it's waking up, and it only wakes up when you give it permission. You have to give it a home. And you say, well, I'm not all lofty and spiritual. Well, the manger's not sanitary. It's the heart that you place it in, that you place the birth into, the baby into. And so you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have your act together. And you can be innocent and open like Mary. You can be organized and competent like Joseph. But babies aren't competent. Did you ever notice that? Babies are incompetent. And this birth in you doesn't know really how to do anything. And you know, when you take a spiritual step, I don't know if anybody's going to relate to this, but when you take a spiritual step, you always have that period of time where you don't feel like you really understand what's going on. Or how am I supposed to show up? How am I supposed to be? And anytime you take a spiritual step, it happens in life in terms of puberty or adolescence or any time in life and you make a change, but it's also true in your spiritual steps. So let's examine this Christmas that you're going to be going through. You're going to be having a celebration. There are going to be people there. And where there are people, there is imperfection. You're going to show up there. And where there is a person, there's imperfection. How about right now deciding to let yourself off the hook and to say to yourself, you know, I'm going to be loving and kind to myself no matter what. No matter what, I'm going to give that love to myself. I'm going to be kind to myself. And then, because you can only do it and give it to yourself first, and then maybe I can extend this to the people around me. And so when people behave however they're going to behave, it doesn't mean you have to be a victim or a doormat or whatever, but that you don't try to change reality. Martha Creek loves to talk about it. She teaches Brian and Katie's Loving What Is. It's called Loving What Is. It's letting things be as they are. And the whole Christmas story is letting it be as it is. It happens beautifully, it happens perfectly, but it doesn't look perfect. And that's what we're facing in the world today. We're all facing this. We're all looking in the world and seeing, how can this be? How can that be? Well, it's always been like that, honestly. It's nothing new. But maybe the volume is being turned up. I once heard Eckhart Tolle was asked, do you think that the negativity is winning? And he says, no, heavens no, it's just noisier. But in quiet confidence is my strength. And that quiet confidence is in your heart. But you've got to be quiet. Remember I said the sign of the Spirit, Jesus said, is a movement and a rest. And it's your heart beating. That heart within you has a built-in rest. Oh, I don't want to get too abstract here, but there's a rest that you've got to take. I was a minister for 40 years, and I never took a sabbatical. Almost everybody I knew took sabbaticals, but I didn't need to because I built a rest into every day, and I built that into my life. Do you take the time to create the spiritual rest for yourself that gives your heart the nurturing and the peace? And that could be, there's so much beauty around here. Most of us think it's over by the ocean, but head toward the swamps. There's some really hidden gold there. It's gorgeous. But for each one of us, what are we doing to use this Christmas time to give birth to a new possibility so that it can play out into the year 2020? Everything is about setting intentions and then experiencing them. This is the truth, and it's not always comfortable to recognize, but what you're experiencing right now is something that you set as an intention in the past. Everything's cause and effect. And so if you want to have different effects in the future, set an intention in your quiet times. Set an intention in the quietness of your heart and embrace that part of yourself. And give yourself a break, because that part of yourself is wanting to be held. It's that baby in you, and all it needs is you. All it needs is you. And it's not going to conform. The baby's never going to conform. You ever try to feed a baby? You know what? You ever try to make a baby eat? You can't get a baby to do anything. You can play with it so that maybe it's more likely to open its mouth, but if it doesn't want it, it'll just spit it out. You can't make the baby do anything. You have to just let it be and accept it as it is. And this birth of the Christ in you is something that's out of your control. It is beyond you, and yet it is innocent and receptive and beautiful exactly as it is. So let's have a meditation. I feel like I've confused you enough. And let's have a meditation in which we imagine ourselves holding a baby. And this baby is the birth of our true self, our true nature. And it will grow up as it needs to, the spiritual nature within us. But be aware of how much you care about that inner part of you. Allow to rise in you that feeling of love and warmth and affection that you would have for a baby. That baby is you. It's the who that you are. And you love that part of yourself, and you let that part of yourself be. And you give unconditional love, no strings attached, no expectations. And now extend that no strings attached, no expectations to all the people that you're going to celebrate Christmas with. Yes, you can set boundaries, but don't expect people to do anything. You take care of you. You be in your own wheelhouse, but allow people to be and love what is. And make the decision, visualize your time of your celebration on Christmas and see it aglow with God's light and love. And shining with this incredible essence of this energy of this season. And humanity has evolved beyond any time it ever has been in the past. So there's more energy and light now than there's ever been for you to make your transformation, to take your step. And so imagine yourself harmonized with the people around you, that your heart energy goes before you, and that you let go of all expectations of them and of yourself. And know that in the midst of all of this, you're going to open that precious gift that you've placed under your spiritual tree on Christmas, that precious gift of the birth of your spiritual intention, which is truly the Christ in you, your spiritual nature, the who that you are inside. Oh, thank you, God, that this is a Christmas like none other, and that I am embracing myself and loving myself enough to let myself just be, and holding myself close to my heart like a baby. And I begin to do that with other people as well. And I let the conditions be exactly as they are, because they are just exactly perfect, exactly as they are, for what it is I'm going to experience. Thank you, God, that all the baby needs is me. And so it is. Amen.